Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Alex and Networking. I'm your host, Alexander Pavlok, and I'm super excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking about Cisco Meraki's new product called Access Manager. You can think about Access Manager as being an ICE Lite product. They've taken the complexities around Radius and built that as all other Meraki products are and simplified it. Basically put a cloud native Radius server directly into your dashboard that integrates with all of your other Meraki products. So they've taken the complexities around setting up 802.1x, doing cert-based authentication or username and password, and they've really simplified that and put that directly into the dashboard and integrates with all of the other Meraki products pretty seamlessly. So today's episode, we're going to be going through the configurations of setting up a certificate-based Wi-Fi authentication. Those configurations can be replicated and used also for wired 802.1x at the same time. Before we go into it, just to explain the licensing a little bit, in my opinion, it's actually pretty reasonably priced. It is based on concurrent connections. So you can think of it as if you have 250 users and at any given time, 200 of those users are authenticating to the network and are connected, you would need to license out 200 endpoints. So it's concurrent connected endpoints. In today's episode, we're going to be going through configuring your SSIDs to use Access Manager. We're going to be configuring your IDP with Azure Entra ID. We're going to be setting up the endpoint profiles and pushing out the certificates that need to be trusted through Systems Manager. And then we'll go through a test and we'll test connecting to the SSID, doing certificate-based authentication. And then we will also go through setting up MAB authentication for those devices like VoIP phones or cameras that can't actually do 802.1x, and we'll do a fallback to MAB. So we'll go through and configure that as well. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen with you all, and we will go through these configurations. Okay, so just a little prerequisite here. Like I said, Access Manager is still a new product. It was released to general availability in, I believe it was November 2025. So this may not be required, but if you don't see the Access Manager tab here on the side, you may need to go under Organization and then Early Access and enable Access Manager from here. Once you get the licensing for it and claim it into your network, it should automatically, then the tab will start appearing and you can start configuring this. But as the recording of this video, I believe you still do need to enable this in early access. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So the first thing that we're going to do in configuring Access Manager, we are going to configure our SSID to actually use Access Manager. So if we go to Access Control, and you can see the SSID that I'm using is going to be called Radius Test. And we scroll down to Enterprise with. The Access Manager tab should appear here, where before you would need to use either your own Radius server or just use username and password that is built into the Meraki dashboard. So this is where we've simplified this a lot and just allow you to use your cloud native Access Manager that's right in your dashboard. So go ahead and from the dropdown, click Access Manager. And then if we scroll down here, you can see the configuration of this SSID. Once you join, we're going to be tagging everything on VLAN 22. Later in the video, we're also going to go through how you can push down dynamic VLAN tags and also do some adaptive policy with SGT tags as well. But for right now, I just wanted to let you know that this is being tagged on VLAN 22. After we set that up, let's go into Access Manager and then certificates. From here, you'll need to upload any CA authorities that you have. So you can come in here and click Upload CA Certificates, and then you'll need to upload your CA certificate here so that you're basically telling Access Manager, go ahead and trust this certificate from the endpoints. And then you'll need to download the Radius CA certificate. You can see it downloads as a zip file. After we've done that, let's go ahead and configure our Entra ID. We're not going to be doing any username and password stuff in this episode. I might do this in a later episode, but this is very useful to know as well. So if we go under users and you can see I've already configured this, but we'll go into create an Entra ID. You can give this a name of anything. And then okay, from here, let's hop over to Azure, and we're going to create this from scratch. So I already have this configured, but I'll walk you through the configurations here. So you're going to go to Enterprise Applications, click New Application, and then we're going to be creating our own application. You can give this any name that you would like, and click Create. This may take a couple minutes to create. I'm going to go over to my existing application and just give you a couple of the different configurations that we're going to need. So you can see over on here, we're going to need the directory ID, application ID, and client secret value. So you can get the application ID and object ID here. To configure the client secret value, we're going to need to go back to the application. So you can go under app registrations, view all, and let's go under, I believe we're using this one. Doesn't really matter for this, but if you go under manage client certificates and secrets, and then client secrets, you're going to hit new client secret. You can give it a description. And then this value here, you'll copy that and copy that into dashboard. Once you've completed that, we're going to need to give this a couple of API permissions. Let me go to my already configured, and we'll get those here. There we go. So these 4 permissions, you're going to need to grant access to. So you can click Add a Permission, Microsoft Graph, Application Permissions, and then you can just filter for what we need here. Once these are all configured here, click Grant Admin Consent for default directory. And now this integration should be complete. You can click Test Connection and then Save once that is showing as successful. And you can get an idea of what a successful one looks like. Let me go back. You can see that we are synced here. And then once that configuration sync is done, it's going to pull in all of your users and user groups over from your Entra ID. You can see that the IDP source is going to be Meraki. These are my manually configured admins here in dashboard. And then these 3 users are now pulled from my Entra ID. 2 of these users are in the user group called Corp Users. From here, let's go ahead and do the configuration on the endpoints. So we're going to need to do a couple different configurations. We're going to need to push down the certificate from Access Manager to the endpoints so that they trust the certificate from Access Manager. And then we'll need to configure a profile to use the different EAP and 802.1x values that we need to negotiate with Access Manager when trying to connect. So you can see here, I'm using the wireless cert test profile here. So if we do add settings and then create a certificate here, this is the same certificate that I downloaded from the Access Manager dashboard that you saw me do earlier. This is the same certificate. You can just go ahead and upload this here and then put this in the system certificate store. This is going to be the certificate that I'm going to use to authenticate my devices. I did in a previous video, I went ahead and did this configuration of creating a certificate. This is a very basic certificate. It's not designed for enterprise. It's made for one user that would cover everybody in an organization. It has one common name to it, no subject alternative names or anything like that. So it's a very basic certificate. But we're going to push down this certificate to this user. And then this is our profile for connecting to wireless. So we're going to push this down to the endpoint as well. This is called radius test. Disable MAC address randomization. This is optional, but it is recommended for tracking wireless clients. Under security, we can do WPA2 enterprise, and then keep these protocols checked off. Inner authentication, MS Chat version 2. And then under authentication, we're going to be using that same MDM cert that we were configured right here. And then if you were doing username and password, you can configure those values here if you wanted to, or just leave them blank and it'll prompt the end user when they try to connect. And then under trust, we need to go ahead and trust the certificate coming from Access Manager. And then this is my internal certificate from my Windows AD server. So we're going to go ahead and trust that as well. And then under the certificate domains, eap.meraki.com is going to map to the certificate. This needs to be there along with your internal domain for your own internal certificates. That will also need to be there as well. So that should be the configuration on the endpoint. Once that does push down to your device, if you come over into the system settings, under Wi-Fi, click details, and then under 802.1x, you can see that it does have the Wi-Fi profile pushed down to it. This is the security type WPA2. And then we have our trusted certificates and our trusted server names here. This is very important. If this is not configured here, you will get the TLS handshake will not complete between the endpoint and the device, and the connection will fail. So we've go ahead and we've got that configured. The next part of the configuration, we are going to be doing the access rules. So this is where we're going to be configuring like what values we're going to be accepting from their certificates, the usernames and what groups that we would accept connections from. so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and we'll dive into setting up the access policy rules. So if we hop back over to Access Manager and then we go under Access Rules, there is a default value here. This is kind of your catch-all, deny anything that doesn't match. So let's add a rule above that. We'll name this certificate-based. Set the status to enabled. The attribute source 1 is going to be endpoint certificate. And we will be doing the issuer common name. And we'll do contains. And if we hop over to our certificate here, you can see in our common name, we have MDM 802.1x user. So this is the value that I'm going to go ahead and configure here. In an actual enterprise organization, you're probably going to have alternative subject names or different things that are going to identify different sets of endpoints. So you might have something that will distinguish engineers. You might have something that will distinguish specific users. This is where you're going to configure what you want to accept from your certificates that you push out to endpoints. You can also add additional attribute sources here, so it will match multiple attributes, and it needs to match them all for it to accept this policy. And then the last thing that we're going to do here is allow access. And then we're going to go ahead and click save. And you can see now that it added it above the default rule. These are processed exactly like ACLs are. So this will be processed from top down. So your more specific rules you'll want to put to the top. Your more generic rules you will pass down to the bottom here. But I believe this is all we're going to need. We can go ahead and test this out. So let's go to session log. This is where you're going to be monitoring and doing all your troubleshooting in relation to people trying to connect with Access Manager. So let's go ahead and try to connect to that radius test SSID here. So it prompted me for a certificate. Let's go ahead and pass that MDM certificate. And it did fail. Let's go ahead and just try that again. And it looks like it did fail again. So let's go ahead and look at our session logs. So you can see we have a bunch of rejected messages here, and it looks like we are passing the certificate. The username does match. If we click on this, it will open up a little bit more information here. And it looks to be hitting our default rule. So let's go back to our access rules. And let's edit this for subject common name. I'm glad this didn't work. This is actually a perfect way to troubleshoot this. That was a configuration error on my side. This should have been subject common name. So that configuration has been saved successfully. Let's go back to session logs and let's try to connect again. And looks like we went ahead and successfully connected there. Let's refresh the logs. And you can see success and certificate based. It matched to our cert based access rule. Click on it again, you can get a little bit more information here. So that is the exact configurations that you'll go through to set up wireless 802.1x with certificate-based authentication. You can see we've taken the complexities out of setting up your own radius server, setting up all that infrastructure. We just went ahead, made it super simple, put that up as a cloud native product and integrated that directly into your dashboard. With a couple clicks, you can do 802.1x certificate-based authentication. So it is really bridging that gap between networking and security and bringing all enterprise-grade security extremely easy to any organization. The next thing I'm going to do here is we're going to go through and get a little bit more granular on these rules. We're going to be doing some dynamic VLAN tagging, and we'll go ahead and assign some SGT tags as well, which is adaptive policy in the Meraki world. That adaptive policy is where you're going to be getting that micro segmentation with SGT tags. So within the same VLAN, you can configure certain groups or users to only be able to talk to certain resources. So let's dive back in and we'll go ahead and configure that now. So let's hop back over to our access rules and view and edit. And we're going to change this from allow access to allow restricted access. And we're going to be passing a specific VLAN value. If you remember in the beginning of the video, our wireless VLAN is going to be VLAN 21, or might be 22 actually. But we're going to be passing a specific value to the user that has this common name in their subject value for their certificate. So I have set up a VLAN 24 for this on my MX appliance here, which is handing out DHCP and doing VLANs. So let's go ahead and save that value. And then I'm going to go ahead and forget this SSID. Actually, I won't forget it. Let's just go ahead and hop back to my regular SSID. And let's go ahead and connect back to radius test. All right, we connected successfully. So let's open up our access point. You can go to the specific client if you wanted to check this. I prefer to go to the access point. And you can see that now we are on VLAN 24. So you can see how we can do dynamic VLAN tagging. Extremely easy again. Just check off that VLAN ID and then configure what VLAN you want to assign there. So now let's go into the adaptive policy part of this. And you can see these default values here. These are by default created from Meraki. If you come under organization and then adaptive policy, you're going to need to enable this on whatever networks that you want to do adaptive policy for. So this is a little prerequisite, if you will. You'll need to enable adaptive policy here. You can see 8.818 West Division network is enabled. And under the adaptive policy, we're going to need to create groups. So let's name this engineers. The SGT value will be, let's give it value 24. And we're not going to be doing any policy object binding. Let's go ahead and create that. And then under policies, this is exactly like how it looks in the ICE dashboard for configuring access policies with SGT tags. So we can go ahead and click add a policy here. So let's do something like engineers are not allowed to talk to Meraki infrastructure. You can go ahead and click deny, and we'll go ahead and automatically create the inverse policy, which is infrastructure cannot talk to the engineering SGT tags. You can see that successfully created that, and now you can see here our engineers are not allowed to talk to the infrastructure. Now what you need to do from the Access Manager piece of it, we're going to hop back to our access rules. Let's go ahead and edit the cert-based policy. Check off adaptive policy. And we're going to click the engineers and click save. Now let's go ahead and disconnect from the Wi-Fi. We'll go ahead and connect back. Once I get connected back, looks like we're successful now. Where you're going to actually be checking SGT tags assigned to users. I don't believe you can actually see this from the access point page. I stand corrected. It will, once you have adaptive policy tags configured for a user that's connected, it will actually add that column here, it looks like. So we can see this directly from here on the access point page. You can see that I now have the SGT tag of 24. So again, super, super easy to be doing adaptive policy with Access Manager. So you're getting that granular micro-segmentation through Access Manager and your Meraki access points in really like a couple clicks. If you come into the user here now, you'll be able to actually see the adaptive policy tag here as well, along with the VLAN ID. Okay. Awesome. So you can see how easy it is to do the certificate-based authentication. We've done some dynamic VLAN tagging. We've done some dynamic SGT group assignments. You can see how you can configure that granular access with the adaptive policy. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is we're going to go through another really common scenario where you have IoT devices or other devices that just can't do 802.1x authentication. So for those devices, what we do is called MAB bypass. We're going to be doing this on a wired port so we can kind of get an idea of what it looks like on the switching side of things. So to start here, let's go ahead and share it back. We're going to be going under, the first thing I'm going to do is go under switching and then access policies. We're going to need to configure an access policy here. And it's very similar on the wireless side. Instead of configuring your radius server here, we're just going to be selecting Access Manager from the dropdown. So let's go ahead and create our policy. The name, I'll just name it IoT devices. And here from the dropdown, we're going to be selecting Access Manager. The policy type, we're going to be doing, for this, we'll be doing hybrid authentication. And that what that is basically saying is we're going to try 802.1x first. And if that fails, we will fall back to MAC address authentication bypass or MAB bypass. So we'll click hybrid authentication. For this example, we'll do single host mode, but we have some documentation. There's different use cases for these different host modes. For this, super basic, we're just going to do single host. We'll do 802.1x control in both directions on the switch port, so incoming traffic and outgoing traffic will require authentication. You can do a required authentication interval to re-authenticate. You can say like every 5 minutes we want to authenticate again. Critical auth VLAN. This is going to be if the access manager is unreachable for whatever reason, internet connectivity went down, whatever reason it might be, so we can't do authentication. What VLAN are we going to default back to? So this is going to be the critical auth VLAN. Failed auth VLAN is if you fail authentication, what VLAN are we going to put you on? So most of the time you'll want to have some type of restricted access VLAN, like a quarantine VLAN or something like that, where it has connectivity to an internal resource or external resource that they might need connectivity to, just internet access or something like that. But for this, it's going to be super basic, just access manager, hybrid authentication, single host mode. Let's go ahead and save that. Now we need to actually assign this access policy to a specific switch port. So we're going to go to my laptop. This is going to be a 9300 switch. Let's do this under port 7. Let's change this to an access port, and then the access policy, you can see here, the one that we just configured, IoT devices. The default VLAN is VLAN 21 for wired devices on my network. Click update. And now let's go back to access rules, and we're going to be configuring our MAB authentication bypass rule here. So click add a rule. We'll name it cameras. Enable attribute source 1 will be, let's see, endpoints. We're going to do MAC address. We're going to do starts with. So this will match the OUI of my cameras. If I hop over to cameras, we'll get that MAC address here. And there we go. Let's go ahead and configure that now. We'll do allow. If you do allow access, it will be on VLAN 21 when it does authenticate successfully. But however, I want to do some dynamic VLAN tagging here. So if you match to this policy, I have a separate VLAN set up for just my cameras. So we're gonna go ahead and put this camera on VLAN 23. Okay, awesome. So now I've got my camera here. I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the switch behind me, and let's see if this authenticates successfully. I'll go ahead and share back again. Let's go over to our session logs, and we should see this come online very shortly. Let's hop back over to my switch. You can do some monitoring on this here as well. So you can see port 7 is now lit up. My camera is booting. And we should see this very shortly come up here in our session logs. All right, you can see that we are in progress now. And you can see it matched to my authentication protocol MAB. And you can see success. Let's hop back over to the switch port and make sure that this did put this on the correct VLAN. And under current clients, you can see my camera, and we are connected on VLAN 23. So MAB authentication bypass, super easy with Access Manager. So just to kind of highlight, Access Manager is a really powerful and simple product. We've basically taken those complexities of setting up enterprise-grade security with 802.1x cert-based authentication or username and password authentication, and basically made it cloud native, super easy to set up. The licensing is relatively inexpensive. You'll need to talk to your account management team from Cisco to get, or your partner to get quoting on that. But in my opinion, relatively inexpensive for what you're getting. But super powerful and really exciting product in my opinion. So I'm really happy to demonstrate Access Manager for you there. As always, leave any questions, comments in the comment section of the video. I encourage anybody who has their own experiences with Access Manager or setting up the profiles on the endpoints, pushing out certificates, share your experiences with 802.1x in general or with Access Manager. And as always, happy networking.